What's up, community? This is Danielle Forward, the CEO and founder of Natives Rising, where our mission is to holistically empower Indigenous people with jobs and technology, entrepreneurship, and wellness education. Today, we are focusing on technology again in our hiring series, where we are helping you figure out how to get a job in the age of AI. So we have some very special guests for you today, my friends from Google, NVIDIA, and Onebrief, to answer all of your questions for how to get a job in this day and age. So I will let our special guests introduce themselves as I add them to the stage. All right. Welcome, Emily, Sarah, and Kaushik. It's so great to see you all. And thanks so much for sharing your time with our community today. We have a lot of good questions, and I already have some from some of our guests that they sent ahead of time. So yeah, I'd love to get started on the intros, starting with Emily.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Hitscherich. I am a senior technical recruiter currently working at Onebrief. I have about 7.5 years of recruiting experience, mostly in the technical space and mostly in the startup space. So excited to talk with you all about all things AI.
Kaushik, go ahead.
Let me go next. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Kaushik Sethuraman. I'm a group product manager at Google's search and AI organization. Very excited to be here, especially to share my experiences with companies that have built the search engine which you use every day, or the social networking and community-based experiences that you might have used that I was at Meta, and also some of the enterprise tools that I had with Microsoft. So I'm happy to bring a lot of those experiences to our conversation today. Nice to be here.
Yay! Thanks, Kaushik. And then Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really proud to be here supporting Native Rising and representation in tech, because seeing yourself reflected in the industry really does matter. Again, my name's Sarah. My pronouns are she and her, and I probably have Chickasaw Nation heritage. Somehow, I've been almost 20 years in tech, the last 10 between NVIDIA and Google. I grew up in rural Oregon. I was the first to graduate from a bachelor's degree in college, but it took until I was 26 because I dropped out several times. I today at NVIDIA lead 2 teams of program managers, specifically supporting inclusivity. What I love most about this moment in AI is giving us new tools that really, it's not replacing us, but it's making us better. So happy to share. Thank you.
Nice. So excited. Yeah. And if folks could just mute, Sarah, if you could mute when you're not speaking, just to make sure we don't have any feedback issues. Super exciting. We have a lot to cover. So very first question, and feel free, if I would love all of you to answer, but if you feel like you want to pass, that's totally fine. We have plenty to talk about. So first of all, how do you guys feel AI has changed the types of skills companies are hiring for in tech currently? And what have you seen in the role that you specialize in?
Yeah, I can start the conversation if that's okay. One thing I do want to talk about, which everybody seems to be talking about, is AI eliminating jobs or not? And rather than enter into that kind of debate or conversation, which I think is going to be ongoing for a while, I'd really want to talk about the fact that AI is definitely displacing what I call competence and shifting what is the axis of value creation. And so what was normally a lot of things around product execution, I think AI is beginning to do a lot of that. And I think the value that I think a lot of us are expected to work on more is the orchestration and the vision and the ability to kind of manage that orchestration. So just to put a few more things into this particular topic, I think the skills that AI usually cannot replicate easily are the ones that most folks, especially as hiring managers like myself or others, are looking for. Are 4 of them. One of them is what I call critical thinking. The second one is strategic vision. The third one is mostly around ethical judgment, especially when it comes to AI. And the last one is still the ability to work, in these complex scenarios where there are a lot of humans around. So what is usually called a stakeholder management. So these four things are going to be even more important, along with the need to orchestrate is kind of how it would, stir the conversations, for that particular question.
People skills. Classic. Awesome. Yeah. Emily, Sarah, what would you guys add?
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, Kaushik, about the replacing versus, and Sarah, I know you mentioned like how can AI make us better at our jobs? And so that's really what I'm seeing as a recruiter, as far as every role that I've worked on over the past, 2 or 3 years, there's been such a shift in terms of AI fluency. And can you use AI to not replace yourself, but to accelerate your skills? And so I know that, for example, the company Zapier has a really great framework around this. You can actually just look it up. They have essentially like 4 levels of competency with AI that they've included in all of their interview questions across the board, from product to marketing to software engineering, of asking how you're using AI to, like I said, accelerate your output and your efficiency. And so I think that's something that all job seekers should be thinking about as they both apply for jobs, go through the job search process, but then also start a new job or even accelerate your current job, of how you can use AI to make yourself more marketable. And I think that even just thinking about that puts you ahead of a lot of people, because there's a lot of resistance of people being kind of afraid of AI is what I've seen. So if you kind of lean into this new world that, is new to all of us, I think that's really appealing to employers.
Nice. I'm going to look at that Zapier thing later too. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I've been recruiting in AI for 10 years now, but generative AI is really, what is front and center right now. And so I think that, what's important is there's certainly going to be the technical skills that folks are needing, that companies really are needing. So how can you get your hands on those skills? How can you integrate those with your projects if you're in school still, or do it at home if you can? It will be important. But like all my co-panelists have said, it's still new. And so the approach as well, or for the roles that are in coding or hardware specific, we're looking to see how folks are adapting, learning, and utilizing it. I was recently hiring for 2 roles on my team, and it's the first time I added it as a interview question. I've interviewed a long time in general, but added this one. And what was nice is I wasn't looking for someone to tell me every AI tool they used in recruiting. I was more looking to see just that comfortability. One of my favorite responses was somebody said, well, I use it to understand other people's point of view. I'm a strength coach, but I'm not an endurance coach. So I asked it to be an endurance coach teaching a strength coach. And so I thought that was actually really, really smart and easily applicable to how they might use that in our job to be better program managers and support stakeholders who personas or, point of views they might not understand.
Freaking awesome. Thank you and so many different answers too. Next question is, what do professionals need to know about how resumes are screened today? And how are you currently using AI at your job for hiring or at your company?
I can take this one as the recruiter on the panel. So yes, I think there's been a lot of talk about this, and I think there are a lot of misconceptions as far as what AI does and doesn't do in the job search. Or rather for reviewing applications. So what I have seen, what does exist, is that a lot of ATSs, applicant tracking systems, have implemented AI in resume screening. Now, they are not supposed to be making decisions, and I can say that I have never used AI to make a decision for me on a resume. But what it is doing is it is putting at the top of the pile what it thinks based on the job description and the criteria for the role, what resumes are most likely to be a fit. So it'll say, here's the 5 skills for the role. Do these applications match the skills? Yes or no, kind of green or red. And so that is something to be aware of, especially in the land of AI where there's mass applying as well. So there's these tools that exist that some of you may have seen, some of you may have used, where you can throw out mass applications, 500 at a time kind of thing. And recruiters are overwhelmed by that. And so there's this sense of candidates using AI to apply, but also recruiters using AI to screen. And so your AI is looking at my AI. I don't know if you've seen like the Spider-Man meme of like pointing at each other and the AI looking at each other. So it's something to be aware of for sure. The other thing I would say is I've seen a lot of AI note-taking happening in interviews. And I think generally speaking, that has been a net positive because it gives people, the interviewers, the ability to pay attention to the people that they're speaking with and evaluating for the role, as opposed to frantically typing notes on the side. And you should always be informed of that, that you're being recorded and it's being taken, the notes are being taken. So I would say those are the 2 main pieces that I've seen just in my experience as a recruiter.
Nice. Kaushik, Sarah, anything to add on how your current company or role is using AI in hiring?
Sure. I can add a few things. More than the automated talent screening systems and so on. More specifically, as a hiring manager, a few small facts. I usually take about 30 seconds to 3 minutes to look at a resume, and it's a very limited amount of time indeed. And so one thing that I really want us to think through and make sure that we do moving forward is, rather than saying things like, I know Python in a resume, I think hiring managers are looking for right now is, what can you do with that awareness of Python, right? Rather than saying, I know Python, it might be useful to say, I'm ready to use my Python skills to bring X efficiencies to Y projects. So at least that way there is an application aspect of it, rather than just saying, I know it, because AI knows a lot more about Python than anybody else can do. But what the application of that Python would be very useful to see in a resume. And I also wanted to quickly call out, I think Sara was mentioning this. I think there are 3 levels of AI fluency that one can start noticing in resumes. Like the first one is what I call user proficiency. So this is kind of listing all the tools people know, and they do a lot of certification courses, and all that is fantastic. But the only point I want to make here is it's a commoditized aspect today. Everybody and anybody is taking courses on Coursera or MIT Openware and writing that they know all these different stuff. But the next level from user proficiency is what we call system understanding. Do you really understand how some of these AI components work, if you really want to be in that space, like in the technology space specifically, right? So these are things like, what's the difference between LLMs? What's the difference between these terms called RAGs and agentic AI? Just the ability to know these components and how they all fit together is the second level of competency, in my opinion. The third one, which is actually where there is even more confidence and excitement for hiring managers to look at, is what I call the ethical application of AI or technology in some of these projects. I feel that a lot of people are in the user proficiency space now when they're writing their resumes or when they're talking about it, but I think they need to move up the chain to more like system understanding and also ethical applications. And also always think about the application of your technology skills rather than just saying you know it. Because when you say you know it, maybe the automated systems will pull it up. But then if, to Emily's point, if 100% of all the people are saying the exact same things, then how is it that companies are being able to get you through the workflow? So I think that's something to think about. So.
Thank you, Kaushik. Yeah, so another layer of differentiation after everybody says they know AI. Now everybody's the same. How do you differentiate beyond that? Yeah, great point. Sarah, did you have anything to add about how companies are using AI in hiring in your part of the world?
The only one I'd like to add is that if you've applied to a company before, they have your information. And so really make sure that you're using AI to support your authentic self, right? We have seen, in the past, I mean, in all companies that I've been at, where we have a resume from 2 years ago, and then this resume looks totally different. That's an integrity flag. And so it's really important, yes, use these tools, but make sure that, you are leaning on, what you do know, how you can apply it, and just being truthful, because, integrity matters. And if you've applied to that company before, likely they have the resume still. I mean, that's just normal in the applicant tracking system. So that's all I just would want to tip folks to.
Got it. So it looks like for this question, we sort of answered this already, but maybe not completely. So with AI making it really easy to mass apply, recruiters are seeing floods of applications. How are hiring teams navigating this? And what can candidates do to stand out when so many resumes look AI polished?
Yeah, so I would say that you absolutely should be using AI when you are working on your resume, working on your application. But my caveat for that is use it to support you, not to replace you. And so what I mean by that is write your own resume first, write it yourself, and then have AI help you and say, how can I improve this? How can I strengthen this? How can I make my bullets results focused? To Kaushik's point, not just using Python, have Python proficiency, but how have you used Python? And can you tell me more? Tell me the story there. And so I would say for both resumes and application questions, take a first stab at it yourself and then ask AI to help you, like, maybe paste into ChatGPT or whatever AI that you use and say, how does my resume stack against this job description, and have it tell you the gaps, and then fill in the gaps where it truthfully makes sense. To Sarah's point, don't make up skills, don't lie, but maybe it can bring to the surface things that you hadn't thought about, and how can I strengthen my application? And if you can do that, you're going to be worlds ahead of so many job seekers, people who are applying right now, because I'm telling you, everything looks the same. Because if you just say, create a resume for this job description, it's going to spit out the exact same thing if you're not getting creative with your prompts, if you're not working with the AI. I can't tell you how many application questions it'll say, why do you want to work for XYZ company? And every single one says, I'm drawn to this company because, like, it always starts with I'm drawn to, and you throw in an M dash in there and you're like, okay, I know this person has created, they're just spitting out whatever the AI spit out. And so work with it, use it, but use it to your advantage and personalize it, because that's how you're going to stand out, is looking unique, using your unique skill set, your unique experience, your unique phrasing with the AI to just help optimize and improve.
Wow,
Really
solid
amazing.
tips.
lots of gold dust tips there, Emily. So thanks for sharing that. One thing I do want to talk about broadly is many times people think of their resume as an entire catalog of all the historical things that they've ever done. And I think this is not the time to do that. Choose your story that you want to talk about. Not everything fits in the story that you might have done. And it's okay to change your story as long as it's authentic and so on. But the thing that's painful is to just see a hash of everything that somebody wants to talk about. But I think if you put yourself in for that specific role that I'm applying to, and think about what might that group, what might that company look for in me that might fit that particular role, then choose that story from your authentic self to talk about, rather than just put everything down there just because you've done everything there. I think that's a very important thing to actually note, because a resume is historical, and then the interview is future looking. And so, to Sarah's point before, make sure that your historical pieces and vignettes connect with the future conversations you want to have. Many times people write a lot of things, they don't know how their things connect with the future conversations. And so when invited to a conversation, it should all connect together, because your story is not just what you've done in the past, but what is the story that you want to write for the future as well. So they all need to tie together.
Yeah, solid advice. Sarah, did you have anything to add on?
I feel like I'm being replaced. No, it's funny because Emily and Kaushik mentioned some of the tips where that was how I helped my friends or how I helped candidates in the past. I did recruit for 15 years. Was first I would look at their resume and let them know, like, hey, do I feel it matches the job description? And it's funny, now AI can do that. But that was one of the things that folks really needed help with. And then making sure, like, hey, I see this as important in the job description and I don't see this in your resume. So I think that's so great. Just that, these tools are more available, because otherwise you had to know somebody that could help with that. And then, as Kaushik mentioned, the other tip that I always suggest in that future looking is, when I think of success in recruiting, or if I think of my own personal journey of applying to roles and then how I liked the company, I always think in 6 to 8 months, will you like the job and will you be seen as good at it? Now work backwards from there. And so, you can use and utilize AI now to help with those, and those can help with those stories, because everybody needs to ramp up. Everybody needs to onboard into a new role in a new company. And so, really thinking that future looking and understanding that story and making sure, you're really taking responsibility for your own success. Again, by like saying, hey, I'm going to learn, I'm growing, I have a growth mindset is going to help, because AI is continually changing and the skills needed across the board, that's the mindset we are looking for folks to have, that resilience, the belief in themselves, that they can be successful in the role. So.
Awesome, thank you. So speaking of career storytelling, how should professionals update their career story in their resumes and interviews, or their LinkedIn, to reflect the impact of how they've been using AI on their work? So in other words, how important is it to include AI skills when talking about themselves as a candidate, and what kind of AI skills?
Well, I think, again, I like how Kaushik had mentioned, sort of the layers, right? And I know, several of folks watching, maybe in technical roles, right? Software engineering, hardware engineering. And so there is some real true, algorithms, RAG, LLMs, right? There's some of those really important critical components of generative AI. The AI of the past was like ranking and recommendation, right? That's Google search, that's YouTube music, that's Spotify. Like, that's been around for 15 plus years. And then we have computer vision and, generated graphics, AR and VR. That's the AI that is also included in AI. So it's in addition to this generative AI. And so certainly if you have, related skills, if you're, staying on top of the generative AI skills, or you've used other AI skills or machine learning skills in the past, that's going to be important for technologists. And then I would say, in one's role, that's adjacent to technology, like my role, it's going to be likely learning those new tools right now, trying things, having a product manager mindset. And so I'd love Kaushik to hear that in a sense, because, when we're creating tools and programs for our recruiters, and so I have to really think like a product manager when I'm thinking about what AI tools will actually, bring us, better results and support the work more. So those would be some of the skills, and just tying those together, right? So technical skills, tie them together, and don't be afraid if you don't have everything, because only a few people, right, have everything. So
no, I totally was excited when you used the word resilience, Sarah. I think I use that word a lot as well. So a few things from me related to the question that you asked, and since this conversation is for the community that I think historically marginalized, candidates, so to speak, Native Americans or economically challenged folks who've really not had the chance, like, for example, to study at top colleges or always be in the top of some of these places or historical places where tech companies go and recruit. I think the journey that a lot of folks go through, which is overcoming, systemic barriers. It could be digital divide. It could be lack of resources. I feel that this resilience, again, building on what Sara was mentioning, the community focus, the deep-rooted sense of like strength and responsibility to kind of achieve. I think these are massively professional assets with a lot of people generally don't want to talk about or don't tend to talk about. And I think this is something that, at least me personally, and again, like a lot of distinguished folks here, like Emily and Sara, I've been recruiting for a long time as well, is I think a very important piece of how you tell the story. You have to be authentic, you have to be bold, but you have to talk about the story too. Like like we are talking about, AI can do a lot of technical skills already. There isn't much to keep talking about it, but the human side of it, the human story of it, that talks about the tenacity of folks, especially in the marginalized groups that we talk to, the resourcefulness, the way to thrive and overcome adversity. These are fantastic skills. So I don't want us to always think only about technical skills, because they are dime a dozen, and other things can also do it rather than just humans can do it. So bring those into the picture as well. And it's harder to write those in resumes, but there's a way to write it as well, like Emily was talking about it. So use the resume as a way to tell your story in as brief or as synthetic way that a resume kind of format can allow you. But more importantly, in live interviews, use those. Talk about, not just about, say, learning, say, React or any of these technology tools, but the way you came about knowing about React, how you actually read and learned it. And you could be a bachelor of architecture or arts from a community college, but the fact that you were able to learn and the fact that you were able to do something with it is phenomenal, rather than, especially for me, rather than somebody who's like, let's say, gone to a fancy school and normal part of their learning, they were able to do that. And so I would rather really outweigh the former example in terms of somebody who's embracing resilience and who's out preparing the AI, so to speak, with a human determination. So anyway, got too passionate and carried away about it. But
no, that's amazing, Kaushik. And I'm so glad you bring it up, especially for our community. And my next question will be about that as well. I just want to make sure that I don't want to cut off Emily in case she has anything else to add on this question. But so I'm hearing you say these soft skills really matter. So showing your resilience, showing determination, tenacity, grit, persistence, a lot of these values that make you a really good candidate and employee and innovator, critical thinking skills, and finding ways to show that story and tell that story on the resume and in the interview. Freaking awesome. Because I do want to say, Kaushik, because a lot of people that are marginalized feel like they don't have resources or they don't have enough, but what they get in exchange is often grit and resilience. So it can be a little bit of a, right, people think that if they don't have money, they don't have anything sometimes, but you can have so much and it can show through your story, and your story is free.
And yeah, I'm more passionate on that side. In fact, the first thing I look on a resume is always the bottom section of the resume, which talks about people usually are apologetic and defensive in writing about their hobbies or their passions or their special things that they've done in college. I mean, they do write it because it matters to them, but it's always in the bottom section of the resume, because the top section is always reserved for all these tools and all these different projects, which is important too, don't get me wrong. But for me as a hiring manager, I'd like to make sure that the team composition is based on people who are, who bring that diverse perspectives, who come through different walks of life and so on. And in some technology companies and some groups, they do a good job about making sure that that representation is there. So.
Amazing. We just got a comment from Michelle. She said amazing. And I know Michelle personally. She is wonderful. She's in Navajo Nation. I will get to that question. We'll come back to that question in a second. But Emily, I just wanted to know if you had anything else to add for candidates standing out when so many resumes look AI polished.
I love this conversation so much, especially the talk about resilience and grit, because it's so important. And honestly, it's way less common nowadays. So for those folks who do have that, whether that comes from just their circumstances of having to have the resilience and grit, like that is, way more valuable than just being able to use AI, so that those in combo makes you such a great candidate, such a great employee. With that said, the only thing I was just thinking, Kaushik was talking about like the bottom section of the resume. We were talking about how do we tell our story? How do we make this a little bit more on the forefront? Use that top section summary section. You know how it usually says, you say something like, oh, results-oriented professional with 6+ years of experience. You could say that, but maybe add in something like interesting about yourself, like make it a little bit more fun. I mean, if for people reading resumes, like we're going to talk about the skills, we're going to talk about your experience, but like add something in there that's a little bit different. I mean, standing out is, like I said, so many of these resumes look the same. That's only going to help your chances. It's going to get you a second look from a recruiter, a second look from a hiring manager. So that was my only thought, is just don't be afraid to add something unique about yourself at that top section, in that bottom section with your hobbies, because, we're not just our skills and experience, we're humans. And I think that's really important, especially in the era of AI. So.
Yeah, it's so funny how the human stuff becomes even more important, is what I'm hearing. That's incredible. So speaking of future-proofing skills, very much on the subject of what we were talking about, what technical or non-technical skills will remain essential even as AI transforms the industry, and what are still massive differentiators for job seekers?
Yeah, let me kick things off, not just because the word technical always throws a lot of people off, and I just want to clarify. So I don't want people to just think technical means something to do with computer science and software. Technical can mean a lot of things in different industries too, like manufacturing or construction and core engineering and other aspects, like including pharmaceutical to gene editing and so on. So technology is a very, very broad term. And just like we're talking about here, the advances of AI is penetrating into a lot of those technology pieces too. But one thing is very important and interesting, which I always provide mentoring and guidance as well to a lot of young folks, is to never think about things in singularity. Like, I think we've evolved from the really, really early 1800s, where people were reading a lot of things, not because everybody learned history and economics and geography and so on. And then we came into this world of ultimate specialization. Like, for example, if you go to a hospital today, you wouldn't even find somebody who knows about the heart, but they know about one particular aorta that's going into the right ventricle specifically, because that's the level of specialization. But what I'm saying is, in technology, you need to go back to the previous world, where we need to understand the intersection of a lot of things. And so by that, what I mean is architecture and systems thinking about how different components fit together, how a mechanical aspect of maybe robotics fits with the software part of it. So it's good to not just specialize alone, but also try to generalize a little bit between architecture and systems thinking. The advanced stage of it, the massive differentiator, like to quote Emily's word here about how do you differentiate, is to really start thinking about prompt engineering, or how do the AI tools integrate into that particular systems architecture. So to summarize, the base thing is always to not think about one thing, but think about architecture and the overall systems in whatever domain or company that you're working for. The deeper differentiation is to know how AI specific tools, how prompt engineering can help advance that systems thinking. So that's kind of what I would say for the technical aspect about how do you future-proof yourself. And again, future here is probably 6 months or 12 months, but that's the state how it's going right now. And then the differentiation is on some of the prompt engineering, more of the advanced programmatic aspects of it.
The skill that came to mind, well, there's a few skills that have come to mind that I think are going to be essential, dare I say, forever. And relationship building is one, especially, a lot of us work remotely, although in office is definitely coming back more so, but just the ability to form those human connections. I mean, that's going to get you so much further. I know we had the advice that, networking, you hear kind of like that was the advice, 25 years ago, but it's still the case. I mean, I have so many stories of people meeting in places and then their uncle's cousin's friend got them a job. I mean, just being able to kind of form those connections in person, I think is such a critical skill. And then also I would say critical thinking, when I was talking about earlier, as far as, just people kind of sending through AI generated, whether it be application questions or resumes or answers to application questions, resumes, whatever it may be. Just the ability to go a little bit deeper beyond that and to think about, okay, I can use AI, but how do I go a level deeper to where it's not obvious I'm using AI? Like, how can AI help me as opposed to, just replace me? Or so I think about those two things, I think, with critical thinking and relationship building, especially in this time of AI. Danielle, to your point, I think the human stuff is even more critical, especially like as we all navigate these waters that, like the future, like the 6-12 months, like who knows where we'll be in 2 years. So just being able to kind of hone in on the essential human parts, I think are really important.
Thank you. Sarah, any massive differentiators for job seekers that you think that will remain essential as AI transforms everything?
I think that the panelists did a great job touching on. I love the system thinking and certainly the human touch. So
awesome. I did want to ask Kaushik a follow-up question for some of the soft skill stuff. So let's say critical thinking. So I'm hearing some of these skills, soft skills, like critical thinking, some persistence, some resilience, relationship building. I also heard that 30 seconds to 3 minutes looking at a resume. So that's the challenge, right? It's like, how do I show these things in a written format? Do you guys have any good examples or suggestions or tips for how to convey this stuff in a way that if you're looking at this for 30 seconds, that it'll get your attention?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. So I've shared some thoughts around it, and obviously it's all subjective on how people want to kind of use it. There is a long tradition about there's always only one version of your resume, and I think that's silly, like in today's world. There doesn't have to be just one version of the resume. There can be multiple versions of the resume that satisfies different purposes. For example, when you're applying to a company, you need to have a resume that's got a lot of these, like keywords and so on, because there are these automated systems that will actually track and help you with it. But you have these incredible opportunities, like, say, you can write stuff about yourself on Medium. You have a LinkedIn, which is doesn't have to copy and follow your resume. And everybody who in the tech world generally looks at different sources. So if you are adding a link to a Medium, you bet there's 80% of hiring managers would go click on that link to see what's going on. They're not just going to decide on that. The other big thing for technical candidates is GitHub. So there are a lot of these open sources where people are expressing their story depending on the space that they are in. In GitHub, you are expressing your story through code. You might not write perfect code, that's okay, but it gives me a sense of the type of areas of technical spaces that you're interested in. Medium tells me a lot more succinctly about topics that matter to you. And of course, it is obviously a challenge. I'm not saying this is a perfect solution, but this is one way to kind of navigate this complexity of having to work on different versions of your story in these different particular formats. Obviously, when you have the opportunity to talk to anybody, which itself nowadays I do understand statistically is a very hard thing. It could be the recruiting team's screener, or the initial recruiting call, or the initial hiring manager call. You have to maximize the opportunity that you get there, because that's another place where you can express your story, in a succinct format. So a lot of practice. a lot of reflection and preparation. I tell a lot of people that it might take people like 3 to 6 months before you can draft your story in some of these formats and not throw something together overnight and put it out there, because it does take that amount of time talking to people about it, asking them, hey, is this story coming through with your friends or with your community? I have, since COVID, I had opened myself up on LinkedIn to provide free mentoring on resumes or stories, and people reach out from all over the world. There is this person who reached out from Taiwan yesterday, and from places in Africa, to say, hey, am I okay? How do I break in? And again, those things might not translate into a job, but that conversation about different people in the industry would also let you know how to talk about yourself and how to talk about your technical skills and your soft skills.
Awesome. Thank you, Kaushik. Anything to add, Emily or Sarah, to 30 seconds to 3 minutes? How do you convey some of these essential skills in a way that gets your attention?
Yeah, I love so much about what Kaushik just said. So for the resume point, I'm a big proponent of having resume buckets. So not necessarily, tailoring your resume to every single job that you apply for is very tedious and not necessarily going to get you the result. It's probably not going to be worth doing that, but you can create buckets. So for example, I'm a senior technical recruiter. If I was applying for a job, I have non-tech experience. So I might create a non-tech, recruiter, like go-to-market recruiter resume that highlights that experience more. And I might create one that's just my tech recruiting, or I might create one for a blend, depending on what role I was applying for. And so now I have my buckets. Nothing is a lie. I have all that experience, but I'm tailoring it based on the role that I'm applying for. So that would be my one tip, is if you have different ways you could go. If you think, I could be in a program management or product management or operations, maybe you create buckets in these 3 categories and then refine those, and AI can help you. I was also going to say that I love the tip about GitHub, Medium, curate your LinkedIn profile. There are people like me on LinkedIn every single day. There's these LinkedIn recruiter accounts. They're super expensive, and a lot of people have them. They go and search LinkedIn looking for people. So fill out your LinkedIn with what jobs you're looking for, with your keywords, so that you show up in LinkedIn searches. Let the LinkedIn recruiters come to you. But at the same time, having those things, like having a Medium, having a Dribble if you're in graphic design, having a GitHub if you're in software engineering, whatever your niche is, whatever your industry is, create a profile, have a presence there, and then it becomes a way to tell your story, to go back to that theme in a broader way beyond just the 30-second, resume, because the resume can only tell you so much. But if you have the link to the GitHub, I'm going to be clicking that, because if it's hyperlinked, I'm going to click on that and see how that goes. I always look at people's LinkedIns to see how they match their resume. So just use all of the resources you have at your disposal.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. And fun fact is that, sorry, Sarah, could you mute for just 1 second? I hear a little feedback. Fun fact is that in our fellowship for Native women studying technology, I think about a little over half of our applicants had a LinkedIn. So about 54% even had one. So which is why we're streaming on YouTube right now. But as you can see, right, for different communities, the information for stuff that just seems obvious to people that have been in tech in Silicon Valley for 10 years, other communities, it just might not even be on their map. So thank you for mentioning all of that. We are also streaming to LinkedIn, but I'm just making a point about equity. Anyway, Sarah, anything to add about 30 seconds to 3 minutes on a resume, what people should do differently to showcase these essential skills?
I would say do not over format. Because when you apply, the ATS may change it. So do not over format, keep it somewhat simple. I've seen 3-page resumes turn into 10-page resumes from that. Yeah. And that, is not something that we would suggest as a 10-page resume, unless you're in academia or research. And then the other one, sometimes proactively answering some of the logistical components could be good. If you are willing to relocate to where the role is located, because as recruiters are going through these resumes, I said I'd give it 10 seconds. I give it 10 seconds and I go yes, no, maybe. And then once I get a yes pile, I give those a little bit more and I might get to the maybes. And if I have so many yeses that I know are located where the role is, I will not get to the maybes and I will not get to the nos. It's okay being a no, because at least then hopefully you can get quick feedback and keep pivoting to find where you might be a yes at. So just clean formats, right? Like just really easy to read, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to read down one side and then we're going to read across if we're liking what we're seeing as we read down the one side. I always think I'm mentally checking the boxes of the job description. So again, use AI to help make sure you've included that and then have it simple. And if you can add any logistical component like, hey, willing to work in X city, that might just get you right into that yes pile.
Nice. Yeah, that's some sort of fundamentals, right? And, you know, people with designer backgrounds like yours truly might want to do some formatting, but we must resist the urge for these technical reasons. And people don't know that. So thank you for sharing that. I do want to share a question from Kyle, who is part of our community. So I'm just going to put it in the chat here and show it on the screen. Let's see. So it's covering up your faces a little bit, but hopefully you can see that. Thinking back on conversations you've had with students or junior employees who left an impression on you, what qualities or behaviors made you want to work with them or consider them for your team? This is an excellent question. He is early career.
Yeah, it's a terrific question. So thank you for asking, and sorry to jump the queue again, Emily and Sarah, on this. I think these words came up in the conversation before, but from a behavioral standpoint, I think three words always resonate with me with young people who I've worked with, and why they make a mark. One is they are unafraid or bold to say what they know, what they don't know, what they want to do, what they can do. It's a very important skill. A lot of times people think the biggest hurdle and the challenge is getting in. And I agree, it is getting in. But it's more important to know how to thrive inside a company once you're in. And a lot of people suddenly become overwhelmed. They have an imposter syndrome, so on and so forth. So never lose that being bold, being very, very confident about what you can actually do. The second one is what I would call adaptive learning. It's never, the job description that you apply to is never going to be exactly the same as what you would do in 2 months or 3 months or 6 months. And there's always an expectation that you're just going to adapt to whatever the next thing is, the ability to learn constantly. And so you really, the people who have done that well are definitely people that you tend to recall and to recollect. And the third one is it's kind of related to being bold, but the ability to start producing things, right? Like regardless of the role that you're in, if you are in software engineering, writing a lot of code or reviewing a lot of code. If you are in design, like being expressive about how you want to think through things. If you are, say, a PM, expressing the vision or the strategy. So this aspect of production, a lot of people are very hesitant to write things up because they feel like it's not the right way to do it. But that's really what happens in technology. Ultimately, if you see, it's a very writing job, being a product manager or being an engineer, because you're either writing different types of artifacts. So be bold and confident, learn quickly and adapt yourself. And the third one is publish, produce things that it helps the overall team and company is what I would say, how I remember some of those people who made a mark. So.
Nice. Emily or Sarah, anything to add for, I'll show the question one more time. Qualities or behaviors that made you want to work with a more junior person or have them on your team?
I would say in general, admitting what you don't know or that you made a mistake sometime and how you fix that mistake. When I'm interviewing folks and like everything's gone great and everything's turned out perfect, I'm like, then where's the resilience? Because that's not my story. I've messed up plenty of times. Things have not gone perfect. And so when somebody can, kind of understand that and then follow it up by how you potentially set it up so you don't do that again, right? Like I made this mistake, but moving forward, I made sure to put this, in place. I think that's important. And then, one of the things I wanted to mention was passion for the work or the company or the company's work. I remember when all of a sudden coding boot camps were everything. Everyone should be a software engineer. It's the land of opportunity. And I remember coaching folks who moved from education, from law, from all over the place. And I just remember one person and she's like, I hate it, Sarah. She's like, I absolutely hate coding. And so, of course, it's like a year in after boot camp. And so I just really felt bad for her. So, having that passion for the work you're going to do is important because you have to get up and do it. So you got to show up, even if you mess up, keep showing up. So.
Thank you, Sarah. Emily, anything to add for qualities that from more junior folks that left a mark on you?
Yeah, I think those were some great qualities. The only ones I would add would be willingness to learn and or curiosity. I think that's a quality that is really important and maybe a little bit underrated, but there's so much information out there right now, and you can learn so much just literally going on YouTube or listening to podcasts or joining great webinars such as this one. So, if you have that ability and desire and hunger to learn, that's going to take you really far because we are fortunate to live at a time where there's so much information, free information available to us, and you don't have to go to a top tier college or grad school or law school to learn so many things. So just wanted to add that piece too.
Nice. And we do have a couple of questions from folks. So we have 7 minutes. So let me see if I can get to a couple of them. So a question from Kat King. Do you have any tips for Indigenous people living in Canada? There are a lot of barriers not getting jobs in the US, even remote jobs. So this might be a little technical, but feel free to share any advice you guys have.
Yeah, I was excited when I saw that in the chat because one thing I think folks aren't as aware of, again, you need to get on LinkedIn if you haven't, because it's a really great tool to reverse search your situation and find who is in that situation and what companies, right? So, for example, I even do this when I'm trying to find what teams I might match a candidate to. They might have a bachelor's degree or a PhD in something very, unique. And so then I go and I look to see who is currently at NVIDIA and where, what, has that degree. And then I might find teams. And so I even use that internally, but I highly recommend that. And so that way you also can then potentially network with folks that have similar backgrounds or interests to you. And so when you're in the search functionality of LinkedIn, you can, and it's not a cost, you don't have to have a paid subscription, but you can limit the search to currently at a company or previously at a company. And so then that way you can find, well, what companies have remote or distributed workers in Canada? What companies, who has some similar background as I, because likely then they have more positions that you might be able to fill.
Nice, thank you, Sarah. Anything else to add, Kaushik or Emily?
No, not much. I think Sarah did well there. Okay,
awesome. We have another question from Kyra. I think it's Kyra Blevins. Tell me if I'm saying your name wrong. As a new grad starting my career in UX design, what's the best way to land my first role in today's AI-driven landscape, and how can I make sure my LinkedIn profile catches the attention of recruiters?
I can start off with this one. So first of all, congrats. Welcome to the workforce. So I would say that this is a great use case to kind of what we were talking about earlier as far as using AI. So if you can go on ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, whatever you want to use, and say, help me build out my LinkedIn profile to be appealing for recruiters in UX design, and then maybe paste in a couple of jobs that you have found that you are really excited about and kind of see what it spits out, and then just go back and forth with it, play around with it, prompt it back and forth. But I think finding those keywords that UX recruiters are going to be putting in their search is a good first step. Telling your story, what we were talking about earlier, in your little about section, if you can make that kind of compelling and fun. The headline piece is a really great function to use on LinkedIn. So if you can say like UX design new grad looking for XYZ role, or you can make that more fun. AI can probably help you make that more a little compelling and creative. But I think this is a really great use case for that, because AI will really help you build out that profile. But I'm really excited for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Congratulations again. Just a few small tips that I've seen people do is, let's use a gardening or an agriculture analogy, right? Let's say if you're a UX designer, think about the seeds that a gardener or an agriculture like. You always want to get a design job, and which you should do. And there are different options there. Again, look for LinkedIn quite a bit. Try to see if there are related jobs in different places, so on and so forth. But the second interesting thing is, you don't have to just plant the seeds of design, right? You can also plant the seeds of design and something. And like Emily said, there are so many things that are for free today. You can see how maybe you could have your Figma-based, portfolios that showing up somewhere, or you've done something with the free versions of Figma that connects with a specific industry. And so you could think about industry as a different dimension or a perspective where you think you can actually contribute a lot more, and maybe that's another seed. I've also found some success for some folks where they open up themselves for doing it for free, to say, hey, you can work pro bono in some particular industry to get that experience. Because I think the first job is always harder, because you may or may not have internships that are all connected, or it's getting very competitive today, because people are coming in for internships even before they at the fall break after their first semester. It's kind of ridiculous sometimes the way I think about it, because they just went to college and they're showing up in internships, and I guess not everybody can do that. So just look for things that you can do for free. Connect with people and say, hey, what would it take for me to kind of go into this particular domain? And I'm sure you will be able to find some right ways and where the path might take you. So.
Yep, definitely. As a former UX designer, UX is one of those things that you can showcase through a portfolio, and it's easy to demonstrate your skills and your work. So some things aren't so easy to do that. Some things are more metaphysical, but for designers, you have a lot of chances to showcase what you do. And having testimonials and referrals and building your network, like Kaushik said, doing stuff for free, showing your skills, it's timeless, honestly. Being able to show what you can do. So thank you for that, Kaushik. Emily, anything else, or anything else to add to that last question? Awesome. So I want to be mindful of the time. We have 1 minute left. I'm just going to show this for fun, because obviously the answer is yes, but Kyle wants to know if he can connect with you guys on LinkedIn, which is a great question. And Kyle, you can definitely connect with me. My friends are very nice. I see them nodding their heads, so yes. Thank you for asking.
The only thing I would add, sorry, is that it's not just about connecting on LinkedIn, but actually making it usable and useful, right? Like so many times, we add people, but try to see how you can use that. Like, ask a question, just make sure that you're active with the group that you're connecting to, because otherwise everybody's lost in hundreds of LinkedIn contacts. So I think that would be a very purposeful way to use it, rather than just stopping at a connection. So.
Awesome. Okay, well, it is top of the hour, 1 p.m. Central. I want to be respectful of y'all's time. Thank you guys so much. If you want to leave with any final closing thoughts or words of wisdom, very quickly, please do share. Any last words, Emily, Sarah, or Kaushik?
thank you for putting this together and for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah, likewise, Danielle, thank you for doing this. I think yeah, there was a question whether you would have more events like this. So if you have, happy to help. And if you want some of us to be there as well, happy to kind of look for opportunities where we can definitely bring more value and enthusiasm to this community. Thank you again.
Thank you all so much, Emily, Kaushik, and Sarah. And thanks everybody for attending live. So I'll just do a little closing. You guys can drop off if you want. But thank you everybody for attending live. We will have more of these events coming up. We have one in partnership with our partner Shipped actually next month. So just subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on Instagram. And then you can get a heads up when we're doing this next. But feel free to add me on LinkedIn, add our friends on LinkedIn, and follow us on social media to get access to more of these events where we can get you some help in getting your dream job. Cool. Thanks so much for attending, and we'll see you next time.